To define cabaret, well, people have been struggling with this question for decades.
Oh, gosh.
Well, you know, cabaret is such a funny word, really.
You know,
It's a hard question to answer.
I think cabaret is...
I don't know if there's only one answer. I'm sure you'll have a whole basket full by the time you're done, but I think there's certain ingredients to it. It's usually an intimate space where most of the time there's no fourth wall. The artist is communicating directly with the audience. And I think those aspects continue to make it unique and will make it live forever.
Cabaret evolved out of French cabaret, which is the Chat Noir, the Black Cat, which opened, and they put a stage in a bar, in a cafe, and poets tried out material, songwriters tried out new material. But then at the end of World War II, when censorship was being lifted off of Germany, there came a rise to the German cabaret.
Im Februar 1916 gründete Hugo Ball in der Spiegelgasse 1 das Cabaret Voltaire, aus dem Dada entstand.
And that's what the musical Cabaret by Kanderneb and the book by Joe Masteroff reflect, the emergence of German cabaret.
Welcome, bienvenue, welcome. Fremda.
And meanwhile, while all of those things were happening in Europe, America has always been a little jealous of the artistic developments of Europe. So meanwhile, as Prohibition was happening, you also see a rise of like restaurants and underground bar scenes because you couldn't buy liquor and take it home with you. So that's when America kind of melted the idea of the nightclub, the supper club, the jazz bar, and the European idea of what cabaret was into this format that saw, you know, Frank Sinatra playing the Copacabana and Billie Holiday and all of these great jazz singers emerging into this cabaret world that found its success off music and specifically ladies singing sad songs at a piano.
I came to New York in 1969 and I got into the cabaret world long before the Manhattan Association of Cabarets or the Mabel Mercer. There were a lot more cabarets around in those days, in the 70s, but you also weren't asking the big ticket price. You weren't, you know, and there were more just different. And you'd go around town and put up your posters all over town. I remember going with my friend on the back of his motorcycle all around Manhattan, putting the posters of the show. They were up everywhere. And so you don't see that anymore. But I did a lot of years of singing a lot of ballads.
Regret you? What's there to regret?
My communication has it's always been important to me that there has been a seriousness about my communication as well as comedy. But it was that important to me that I have this other serious side, sing those ballads, because I could sing the hell out of them.
How many times did I say I was wrong? Just to stop yet another fight.
Back in the day, I loved it. I loved to get the knife out and put it right in the heart and then turn it. Now you're really sad.
I don't even care who's right. Forgive you. What's there to forgive?
So you see this boom happening throughout the 40s, the 50s, and even on into the 60s. But if the 80s taught us anything, it's that business people knew how to ruin something. In the 80s, it stopped being where the clubs paid for the artists directly. So it used to be that a club, the Copacabana, would hire the musicians, would sell the show, and simply just pay Frank Sinatra to come in and sing.
The kind of work I like best is in a field that is rapidly becoming extinct, nightclubs. I don't know, but it's kind of fun to stand out on the floor all by yourself with a little band like this and a couple of hundred aficionados out there in the audience. And it's generally the way I like to work at the Sands Hotel in Vegas or the Fontainebleau Miami or any of the other great nightclubs in America today.
But in the 80s, these clubs got smart and they said, you know what, why don't the artist pay for the musicians and the artists pay to use the space? And then it became much more difficult for people like Frank Sinatra or today Frank's equivalent Lady Gaga to perform in a format like that. It made no sense. They can play Vegas. Why come do it in New York at a small space for no money and all of that risk?
You happy people, the drink and the laughs on me.
This is the big difference today. The smaller rooms within the resorts no longer have girl singers like us getting up and singing, because what they want is young singers with pop music, because that's more familiar to the younger audience coming. And so it means that if you're older, you're phased out.
I forgive you. Now, goodbye. No, goodbye.
So it's all very different now.
And so in New York, we had a lack of ability to get those big names, but what responded to it was the Broadway community. So the Broadway community's right here, they're already making money, they are looking for something to do or a showcase on their night off, they know musicians, they live in the area, they don't have to fly in to come, travel in to come play a club. And so the New York cabaret scene really kind of engulfed the Broadway community, or should I say the other way around. The Broadway community engulfed the New York cabaret scene. And since then, Broadway and cabaret in New York have been married. Since we kicked out all of the big-name jazz stars and only made it financially possible for people that live in the area to perform at a club. It's like Eva Noblezada, who has a fan base that being in that room is just so effervescent. It's like it shakes with excitement to be there. Or Reeve Carney performing here, connecting with their audience on a first-person basis.
People think of cabaret, they often think of a lovely lady in sequins singing torch songs, which we have. But our definition of cabaret is very broad. No pun intended. We present everything under the sun here. Really, if one was being pretentious, more like a performing arts center than one would think of that sort of throwback nightclub scene with just, you know, the standards. We have everything.
Cabaret is a space where any act can happen, like a juggling act or a burlesque act, and it's really the size of the house, isn't it?
Yep.
It's really the 99 seats or less, which sometimes it's not.
Cabaret, in my mind, has a small feeling to it, an intimacy to it.
Cabaret is that breaking the barrier between you and an audience in a small room and sharing together a collective understanding of music or word.
Cabaret is the art of being yourself on purpose.
There are some rules, but there are no boundaries. You can do anything. If it's authentic, you can create an act of any nature that you want.
What's great about it is performers can define it for themselves. It's pretty elastic.
It's a home to people who have something to express in all fashions, and we welcome them, any age, any background. We always cross the gender rainbow. We've always been doing it.
When I started this job, I told my boss, Rob Diamond, I said, I want to see the crooners, I want to see the instrumental acts, I want to see ventriloquists, magicians, burlesques. Alt cabaret has become very, very interesting. I recently saw an act. One of my writers and I went to see Conversations with Clay Woman. They start out with a video of Clay Woman, who is 500 million years old, and she lives on another planet, and she loves Earth, so she comes to visit all the time. And she's got these matted, dirty dreadlocks, and her face is made of clay, and she's wearing rags, and she walks very slowly because she's 500 million years old. She's not in a rush. She sits down and she crosses her legs and she talks to everyone, very genteel, about how much she loves Earth and how she misses the days of the dinosaurs because the dinosaurs all sang so beautifully. And one day a dinosaur said, "You know, we're not doing this for your entertainment." The audience was laughing their heads off. And I said to my colleague, I said, "You have to write this one up because I don't get it. I don't understand what made this funny." And that writer used to be an actor and totally got it. So I think that the potential for creating newness in cabaret is greater now than ever.
I like something a little bit edgier, a little bit more contemporary. I want something that feels a bit more of the moment. And I think alternative cabaret, you find that.
Now when I think of Jim, I think of Mexico.
I mean someone who subverts the form.
Margaritas, of course, mariachis who don't quit.
Who isn't just a crossed velvet dress and a rose singing the Great American Songbook. And someone who can sort of poke fun at that or twist that form or do something surprising or unexpected with that form. Now you're talking. And also bringing contemporary ideas into it, speaking to what's happening in the moment, the issues we're facing through that form.
Remember the promises they made? They said, oh yeah, we'll let the gays marry, and as soon as we do, they'll have all the same rights and responsibilities as straight people. Okay, that happened. But remember what else they promised, friend? No, remember what they promised? They said, we'll let the gays marry, and as soon as we do, people will start marrying their dogs. Well, that seems to have fallen off the agenda.
Instead of, the sexual politics of the 1930s. Which is great fun and feels a little bit like a museum piece. Cabaret is very different in the UK and the US. In the UK, cabaret is much more visual. It comes out of a tradition of music hall, it comes out of a tradition of sort of what they call end of the pier performance. It's like juggling or acrobatics or drag or quick change or some sort of act.
And there are big cabaret communities around the country, in Chicago and in San Francisco, where they do their own thing. And Leanne can tell you about the difference between New York and San Francisco. She's bi-coastal now, but she started over there.
We don't really have a lot of cabaret in San Francisco, so it's kind of making it how you see it. A theatrical cabaret is more heightened storyline, could make the audience think if it's real or not.
So there's theater, fantasy, and then there's reality of what it's
about. And ours is a mix. Ours
is a real mix.
Of all of it.
It was Malcolm. He was from Liverpool. He worked at Standard Fruit. He took me on the banana boat. Whoa! A lot of bananas! Oh, yeah!
I understand what cabaret is from the New York viewpoint. And so I've been able to connect that with my San Francisco theatricality and mesh those worlds together to tell a story. And then put that with surprises, audience participation, a sense of heightened theatricality with costumes, wigs, but putting it in a contained space. So it's still a nightclub cabaret show and not a full musical, but it gives the elements of that with story and with theatricality. Which, standing next to a piano, is a beautiful thing, but it's just not interesting to me.
Nothing can replicate the in-person live experience of seeing someone with no degree of separation.
The intimacy lends itself to being this exchange, sort of an unspoken exchange between you and the performer, because inevitably the performer will make eye contact with, if not everyone in the room, someone in every section. And it's almost like a dialogue, an unspoken dialogue. Some people don't realize that it's an unspoken dialogue, and they don't realize that some of the questions that the actors are asking are rhetorical, and they just start yelling things back. And then they realize that they think they're the only people there.
When I start talking to people in the audience and coming down and sort of messing with them, people love that.
Gonna be a good show, the lady with a silver beret. She thought, I'm gonna wear my beret tonight, and there she is wearing it. Oh my God!
It shifts the energy in the room. It's all about energy. It's like the energy in the room. Is it alive? Is it electric? Is it what's going to happen? When people come and sit in a show and someone just starts singing songs and they just sort of settle back and they experience what they expect to experience, that's a little dull to me. I like it when the people are like, what's going to happen? And that's one of the reasons I like doing a variety show. Who's coming next? I like a feeling of anticipation and connection.
So you do want that human aspect. I think that helps with the connection in cabaret. You're sort of in this together, as opposed to a 4,000 seat venue with cabaret. You're all just in that like microcosm of a space. So. And everyone's eating, which is weird, but you deal with it.
There are certain moments when cabaret theater almost feels like church, in that everyone here is gathered. They agree to shut the fuck up for 90 minutes and listen to some music and some word and try to come to an agreement for a little while. And there was one moment where Lillias White, Tony Award winner from The Life and from Dreamgirls, Once on This Island, the lead muse from Hercules, she opened the club actually, but in one of her later shows, she sang the Tim McGraw country song, Humble and Kind. There's a lyric there at the end where like, this is when you get to where you're going, don't forget to turn back around and help the next one in line. And the audience was so moved. They were taking this interpretation of lyric as an instruction. Like they were receiving it as like scripture. And audience, they started standing up, not to applaud, not to do, just to stand up and listen. And I was so moved at that, and as were they. It was just an incredible experience to be in the room where that was happening. And like I said, she like made the place church with a Tim McGraw song.
I just remember my favorite things that I don't feel.
That was so special. When an artist can like take a song and just rip it apart and hand it to you, that's the industry in a nutshell.
I believe that people will always want to have this experience with others, in the dark, music, magic. I think there'll always be an interest in it and a need for it.
To be an audience member and seek to understand the person's story who's singing, and to be the singer and seek to understand what the person is thinking that you're singing to, and this kind of reciprocal, cyclical cultivation of empathy. That's so valuable. How is it relevant today? I'm having a really hard time answering that.
What is the purpose of cabaret? Well, I mean, I'm not someone who believes in purpose, really. I don't think cabaret has a purpose so much.
Okay, the purpose of cabaret is selling liquor.
It hasn't changed that much. So I don't know if cabaret as it exists today is as relevant to today's society as cabaret was during its resurgence in the 1980s.
Much of it isn't relevant today. Much of it isn't at all relevant. It's all about the artists pushing the form to be as contemporary as possible.
When I got in the gay game, you're not going to believe this, when I got in being gay, it was cool.
To talk about what's happening in the world, to engage with the issues that are relevant. Many cabaret artists aren't interested in that. They're interested in really preserving a kind of tradition that is more about a museum tradition. Old songs and old ways and old forms that are great, but are really only there to appreciate. They're not really speaking to the moment. And I think if you want real relevant cabaret, you really have to seek that out. And you need to get out of the traditional venues and find more alternative contemporary venues.
I think that there is a big gap, a big age gap in cabaret performers today in New York City. There is a difference between passion and anger. I might come across angry, but I promise you I'm not angry, I'm just passionate. People have been saying that cabaret is a dying art form for decades.
He says murder!
My response to that is, how can you say it's a dying art form when the vast majority of cabaret performers in New York are over 40 years old? And yet, I have, in the past 2 years, 50 clients, all but one are less than 26. So how dare you say that cabaret is dying when I know 49 people who are hungry to be a part of this community, but do not see themselves reflected in the fabric of this community? And I'm not suggesting that we create a revolution and take the torch from those that are carrying it. I don't want to take the torch from you. The people that are holding the torch created the fucking art form. All I want is for those young people to be able to have a bit of the torch and hold it with the people who are holding on to it. Let us have a seat at your table. Somebody who is doing a fantastic job of giving and creating space for young people in this industry on a regular basis is Susie Mosher with the lineup at Birdland.
This is my opening number. It's my opening number. It's the song that starts out the show.
She is hungry to find young people, looking at new young people that she could feature at Birdland. She said, I saw your feature on Broadway World and I know that you teach these students. Send them my way and give them the opportunity to sing at Birdland.
Yeah, I love having young, talented people. It's exciting because that's what I do. I'll put like someone really well established with other less known people, and I think it's really great for them. It's great for us. People love to see a new, fresh face. I like being able to give people a time where they can come and do their thing.
Entertainment is what you have come to see. Entertainment is what I would like to do in my pants.
The atmosphere in our show, I think, is very communal, very supportive, and fun.
We're gonna look inside my pants later.
That said, I am the first person to tell anyone, how can you possibly seek to be a part of the cabaret world or the musical theater world of today and tomorrow if you don't know about the cabaret world or the musical theater world of yesterday?
It's what I do when I'm with you. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
That's the exciting part for me, is introducing a new generation of Broadway performers, a new generation of ticket buyers, and a new generation of artistic communities to the art form.
And the crowd rushes to the road. Hey, I got it first. Let me take a peek. See the ring, the sable coat. What I earn a year, she could earn a week. And that man, he's a gigolo, even though he chauffeurs her car. Well, why not? After all, she's a star.
If you're younger, learn from the older generation. Listen, learn about cabaret, but know what the root of it is. Understand where it's coming from in order to play with it and twist it, but keeping the root of it. It's an art form that has to change in order to stay alive.
Well, I see it continuing. Maybe the cabaret rooms will disappear, or at least the traditional ones will disappear. They're hanging on by a thread as we speak.
It's true that most of the cabarets that I attended through the years, big and small, the Oak Room with the Algonquin, the Ballroom, 88's, Rainbow and Stars, Judy's, Jan Wallman's, Danny's, I could go on and on, they've all closed, but there are always new ones to take their place. And I always find that very reassuring.
It's kind of having a resurgence right now. There's a lot of rooms in town, like Green Room 42, great room, love it. That's new and it's doing well. You know, Birdland Theater, which is the room downstairs at Birdland, is new. That's where I do my show and I love it. 54 Below is happening, you know. There's, Don't Tell Mom, there's a lot of cabaret spaces. And it seems like people are going out. The people are getting audiences. So I like thinking that it will always be.
Traditional cabaret, I think, will slowly disappear over time. But the things that are now contemporary will take its place as the tradition, right? So the ones who we think of as alternative now, as they age, as time moves on, they will be the traditional. And there will be a new contemporary.
There is great relevance and value to the cabaret community in so much as it brings us all together for the observance of art that will make us think and make us feel.
It'll always be relevant. It's, it's who we are. It's how we grow in a lot of ways. Is by watching other people express their truths, and then we go, yeah, I understand what they're saying. I'm like that too. And then you walk out and you have a little bit of a glimpse into your own psyche, which is nice.
These things survive because they touch a chord, or there's no other way to express what cabaret expresses. So it's still with us. It's worth respecting. It's worth paying attention to.
It's the remnants of an art form that has driven jazz, pop, and the American songbook for the last 200 years.
Finally found a fella.
What does cabaret mean to me? It means everything. It's just you and the night and her music. It's the most exalted form of life. It's true feelings, expression, heart, music. I respect so much what happens in a cabaret, what people are attempting and achieving.